Good afternoon. It's so good for a writer to see a full house and people standing at the back. So thank you very much, readers, for being here. And thank you all for the volunteers in particular who, I don't know what we do without volunteers. So very
we would
polite.
still be caught back in the crowd.
Wonderful volunteers. A big round of applause for the young volunteers. And thank you, JLF, Namita, Shanjoy, and the whole team. It's a pleasure to be back every year. And for me today, it's a special honor to be in conversation with Chitra. I have to tell you that I started reading the book, and it was riveting and compelling, and I just couldn't stop. If you see bags under my eyes, it's because all of last night I was reading the book till we actually got here.
Thank you so much.
It is so vivid, so brilliant in terms of its visual, it's poetic, I could see Sita, I could see Ram, I could see Ravan, I could see Lakshmana. That's the skill of a truly, truly gifted writer, which you indeed are. So let's give our readers a flavor of the book, and maybe you could start by reading the introduction and the passage where Sita, why you wrote the book and what Sita means to you. And you said it was, out of all the books, it was the most difficult book to write.
That's right. Well, I also want to start off by thanking JLF for having me here one more time. And thank you all of you wonderful readers, writers. I know there are many writers in the audience as well. Thank you so much for being here. You have so many other choices. So we are glad you chose the most fun one. Anyway, so 10 years back, I published Palace of Illusions. Thank you. So, a retelling of the Mahabharata from Draupadi's viewpoint. Ever since I finished this book, I have been thinking about Sita, about retelling the Ramayana in Sita's voice. But it's taken me a long time because Sita's character is very complex, and I really wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand how Sita's character is different from the popular narrative that we are given about her. In the popular narrative that has come down through time, based often on maybe like movies or serials or Amar Chitra Katha or all kinds of other things other than the original epics, she's seen as meek and mild and subdued and all of those qualities. And when people say to us, be like Sita, that's what they want us to be like. But as I researched Sita, I found out what a strong character she is, how resilient, how powerful in herself, how she knows what to do when she's in grave difficulty. And that is the Sita I wanted to present so that we change the narrative when people say, may you be like Sita.
Do you think it's Sita's time? Do you think it's Sita's time has come?
This Sita, the real Sita.
So you are making a strong feminist statement through this Sita.
Yes,
and
I
the
am.
timing is politically appropriate.
I think it has always been appropriate, but especially at this time when women are really working hard to find their voice and to stand up, the Me Too movement and all of that. We are standing up against things that are wrong, and we are saying enough, no more. That is exactly what Sita says at the end of the Ramayana. So that is a message for all of us, for men as well as women, because I think when we allow women their right place, their strong place, their ability to be themselves, we have a stronger society. So I will read that little passage in the beginning, and this is from the prologue. The prologue takes place at the end of the Ramayana. Valmiki has finished his Ramayana, and he has brought it to Sita because, like all writers, like you and me, he wants some feedback. And he gives it to Sita, and he says, well, what do you think of it? Sita reads it, and she says, this is very good, the language is good, the descriptions are great, the wars and battles, you got them just right. But, she says, and I'll read from her words, But what occurred when I was alone in the darkness under the sorrow tree, you don't know. You don't know my despair. You don't even know my exhilaration, how it felt, first in the forest and then in Ayodhya, when I was the most beloved woman in creation. So she's saying what's really important, that even if it's a wonderful book that's written from a male point of view, it misses what is central to the women characters. And Valmiki, being a very evolved soul, says, Ma, you must write that part, that book, you must write it yourself. So she begins to write. And this is what happens when she writes. But as I dipped my quill into the ink pot, they rose inside me, voices, some clamoring, some tentative, some whispering, so that I had to still my breath to hear them. Kaikeyi, second queen of Ayodhya, who wrested our throne from us out of blind devotion to her son, only to be hated by him for it. Ahalya, her beauty turned to stone by a husband's jealous fury. Surpanakha, wild enchantress of the forest, whose gravest crime was to desire the wrong man. Mandodari, wife to the legendary demon king, forced to watch her kingdom fall into ruin and her beloved son perish because of her husband's obsession with another woman. Urmila, my sweet sister, the forgotten one, the one I left behind as I set off with blithe ignorance on my forest adventure with my husband. Write our story too, for always we've been pushed into corners, trivialized, misunderstood, blamed, forgotten, or maligned and used as a cautionary tale. Yes, I said to them, yes, I'll write your stories as best as I can, for without them, mine can't be complete. And so she writes the Sitayan. And what she says here is so important, and I think that is true of women's stories. Women's stories are not just about one woman, they're about the whole community of women. And that's what's different about them. Often the Ramayana is really about Ram. That's what it's about. But the Sitayan is really about all of the women in the Ramayana.
What was amazing to me was one particular line which sort of sums up what Sita tells her husband very boldly. She says, she reminds him that you're not a god, you're just a man. So you don't have to be perfect. And throughout this, that ongoing conflict between the two of them, where he wants to be the perfect everything but not the perfect husband, or the husband that she wants, the kind of
the
husband.
Perfect king.
The
That
perfect
is really
king.
important for him.
And at the end of each chapter, you have a little a cautionary, almost like seeing what's going to come next. She takes her cues from lots of intuitive little incidents and anecdotes, and the bow talks to her. The bow talks to her, and she listens carefully to what it's saying before that the wonderful moment where Ravan can't pick it up, but Ram does so very effortly. And the attraction.
And even before that, Sita does so even more
very
effortlessly.
Easily. And you presented her as a very physically strong, martial arts. She could defeat men who she chose to take on. All of it, these are aspects of Sita that I think a lot of us have not thought about. Perhaps they're there in the epics, but you've delineated it so wonderfully well. You can see her, and you can see the battle from within. You can see her actual battle when she's confronted. But the attraction to Ravan, even at that time, and the first time ever that she sees him gleaming and gorgeous and beautiful, can you tell us a little about that part of Sita, the attraction to Ravan, which a lot of people would find, oh, really? Was she attracted to him?
Well, we have to put it in context. And first, I want to talk a little bit about my research, which is that as I researched the Ramayana, even more than when I had researched the Mahabharata, I found that there are so many very different versions. The Valmiki is the original one, But then there is the Adbhuta Ramayana, in which Sita appears as this warrior queen. You know, she is very powerful. She also picks up the bow, the Shiva Dhanu, very easily. And she is able to battle lots of different demons and destroy them. And we know even otherwise that she is very strong, just in how she, when abandoned, is going to bring up her sons all by herself. She is one of the first successful single mother figures, and therefore also very timely for women of our time. Now, Ravan, as I present him over here, I've taken his character also from many different Ramayans, particularly the Kamba Ramayana, which shows him as a very well-rounded and admirable figure. Now, when she is a little girl, which is when Ravan comes to pick up the bow, but he cannot, she is fascinated by him. Now, when she will meet him in the forest, though, and he's the abductor, she is very much against him, and she fights really hard against him. She's not the meek, the woman who's carried away weeping. She fights him as hard as she can, and, she makes him hurt. So that's it. Now, what happens after that is Ravan really responds to her and respects her. So even though he has her in his power in Lanka, he does not do anything to her.
For a year, that's the time frame that he's given her.
Yes, he's given her that time frame. He does not do anything. And he could have, made life way more difficult for her. He could have harmed her in many ways, but he doesn't. And I feel that's the strength of her character that protects her in that place when there is no other succor.
But also the figure of Hanuman in your book is, it was very interesting the way he's been projected. So maybe you'd like to talk about how this Hanuman came into your imagination.
Right.
And the role he played.
Right. Again, in my various researches of the Ramayana, as many of you know, Hanuman is Lord Shiva come to earth. He says, gosh, all of you are going down there. Vishnu, you're going down there. Lakshmi, you're going down there. Getting kind of lonely up here. I'm going to go and be part of the adventure. And so he comes as Hanuman. And Sita, my Sita, because she is very wise and she's in tune with the other world, even as she's a human being and a very human woman with shortcomings in this, but she's in tune with that other world. She gets glimpses of this, and at one point she will realize that this is Lord Shiva come as Hanuman. I was very happy with how the relationship with Hanuman and Sita turned out to be, because he is at once so strong, such a warrior, but in front of her he calls her mother and he's a child. And I really loved that. I really loved how that came out, and I'm very thankful that it came out like that. Thank you.
There's a lot of tenderness in the time that Sita and Ram spend together in the bedroom. The bedroom scenes are described with a lot of sensitivity and very sensuous.
Thank you. I really wanted to portray that golden period, because we remember the sad periods, right? When Ram says to her after killing Ravan, now I cannot take you back to Ayodhya. The people would not accept you. There's doubts about your purity. Or later when he sends her to banishment. But, you're right. I really wanted to show both sides, because I think in a good book, one sees many sides. One sees the complexity of all situations. The 13 years that they spent in the forest, it was like this prolonged honeymoon for them. It was a very loving period where they were able to become very close to each other, and that's what makes the tragedy even more. And so one of the things that I really wanted to point out, and we've seen this in calendar art or in Amar Chitra Katha or even in movies, we're shown Sita demurely following Ram into the forest. Now that is not how it happened, neither in Valmiki nor in Kritibas, who's one of my main sources, nor in this book, where Ram says, now I have to fulfill my father's vow and go into the forest. You, Sita, please stay home and take care of the in-laws. And Sita says, maybe like some of you here, wait a minute. You're going to go off and have all these adventures, and you want me to stay in Ayodhya with the old folks. No, I'm going with you. I'm going to be by your side because that's where I belong.
So, in sharp contrast to that is Lakshman's wife. And I thought maybe the next book could be about her because she's such a neglected figure. But you have brought her out wonderfully well. She comes right at the start, the coronation, and then towards
At the end
end
as well,
And
yes.
it's a tragic story. And how did you think of including her and Ahilya and her story and in a way, like you said, it had to extend beyond just Sita and her life. It was a community of women.
A community of women, exactly.
And their voices.
And
which
Sita learns
answers
from them.
From them.
Sita learns from
and
them.
there's a lot of humility and grace in the way she picks up from various people, including Ravan's mother.
Yes, yes. And including Surpanakha, who is often shown as a totally negative figure. I hope I've been able to show through Sita, watching Surpanakha, she says, what is Surpanakha's biggest fault? She desires the wrong man. And she's punished hugely. And Sita feels that the punishment doesn't fit the crime. So Sita understands that. So Sita's
But she
aware of
doesn't.
that.
She's vicious towards her right till the very end when there's a change of heart.
Yes, yes.
I mean,
yes.
here's a woman who's been humiliated, who's been mutilated, whose nose has been cut off, and her brothers are absolutely destroyed, and she herself, Ravan, all of them feel that it's time to wreak some kind of revenge because of her humiliation. But she comes through in the end very, very a positive person.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
is
yes.
that a unique take on her? Is this your own take on
Well,
her?
I wanted to show all these women from the inside as complex figures because they do certain things because of what happens to them. And I wanted to show that. So, and I was particularly interested in Urmila, who is often kind of forgotten by the main tellers of the tale. In fact, Tagore said this a long time back, that she has been forgotten in literature. He used the term kabbe upekkita. So, I wanted to take on the relationship, the bittersweet relationship when Sita goes to the forest and Urmila is left behind. And then years later, 14 years later, when they come back, how will the sisters reconcile now? That becomes a big scene. Mandodari. There's a real secret there. We won't maybe give it away, but there's a real secret there because of which Mandodari believes something about Sita.
But that is the twist in the tale in
Yes,
this
and that
book.
that
we
is
will not
taken-
reveal it, but my God, it gobsmacked me all right when I read that. And the conversation between her and Sita, somewhere towards the
which
end.
is taken from, again, the Adbhut Ramayan, which has a whole other story on who Sita is and who Mandodari is.
And also how that impacts the last denouement, in a way, with Ravan.
Right, right.
Coming back to Sita's character, the word that you use frequently and she uses for herself, and that's the big lesson I suppose that women are supposed to always imbibe, is to endure. Like they say in modern lingo, adjust kar lena. You get married into a family, the first thing you're told is, this is what it involves. You have to adjust. And the word endure, she has very mixed feelings about, and she often fights it. So I want you to talk about that word, how it keeps coming up. It's like a leitmotif through the book. Endurance,
Yes.
endurance, endurance, duty, duty, duty. That's Ram. Duty, 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 and with her it's endure, endure, endure. But yet, from within her, there's so much incredible strength that
Yes.
the endurance doesn't sound like something pathetic, that she becomes a bichari because she's enduring. That
Right.
was absolutely fantastic how it's dealt with.
Thank you. Thank you. I really wanted to show that. Now, yes, she is enduring. She is the daughter of the earth. So her endurance is like the earth. It's a very powerful endurance. But just like the earth, there are moments when Sita stands up and shakes everything up and says, no more, no more. So that's really very important. Her endurance isn't passive. Now, as I was researching Sita and Draupadi, I realized that they have very different kinds of strength. Draupadi is much more feisty, she's much more outspoken. She will go out there and create trouble if she needs to. And that's wonderful. That's the way she operates in the world. That's her strength. But I realized that that's not the only kind of strength. Although when I was writing Palace of Illusions, I was really kind of in sync with that. I think in the last 10 years, maybe I've grown a little wiser, and I realized that there are many other kinds of strengths, especially in our Indian context, and some strengths, like Sita's, they are quiet. They are enduring, but don't mistake them as passive. They are not. So whenever Sita needs to speak up, she will speak up. Whenever she needs to take a stand, she will. She tells Ravan terrible things. She's not afraid to say those things to him. She doesn't care what he might do to her. She feels he needs to hear them. And when he hears them, he recognizes and he backs off or he respects it. Her endurance is the kind that when Ram tells her that I'm not going to take you back to Ayodhya, she says, okay, she's a realist. She says, okay, you make that decision. I can't force you to change your mind. Then Ravan says, now you can go live with Vibhishan if you like, or go live with Sugriv. I give you freedom. And she says, you can't tell me what I'm going to do with my life, right? She says, you don't want me to go back to Ayodhya, that's your decision. But I will decide what I will do with my life. Let's light that fire. I'm going to step into it. And that is a whole other kind of strength.
Because also at that point, when she asserts herself, and she challenges him by saying, who are you to give me freedom?
Right, right.
Now, it's a very powerful line, because most women wouldn't utter those words. They may feel them, but in a challenging situation, she does say it.
She does say it. It's right in Valmiki. I'm not, I purposely did not make up any of these things. I want to show people it is in our epics. We've just forgotten it. The narrative that has come down to us through maybe a patriarchal lens has just reduced Sita to something she never was. She is a wonderful, she's a wonderful woman, goddess, multifaceted, strong. She's in all of us. And between Draupadi and Sita, we have two wonderful ways of being strong in the world today.
There's also a nice line just before the coronation, or right about the time of the coronation, where she says, it's a grand, spectacular coronation that's being planned, but where are the women? There are no women. The representation of women is something that bothers her. She notices it, and I think she asks Ram, what happened to all the women?
Yes, and then she makes sure that the mothers are present at the coronation because their blessing is so important.
Yeah. There's another passage which, if you're
Yes, I would love to read.
Share with.
I would love to read this passage because I think this also shows the strength of Sita, the particular strength of Sita. And this is at a very difficult moment in the Ramayana. This is when she finds out that she's been sent to Valmiki's ashram. She thinks she's gone there for a holiday, but Lakshmana, who is weeping at this point, tells her, no, you've been banished, you cannot go back to Ayodhya, and this is because of what people have been saying, and this is what she will say. And I think her voice will, I hope, give you a sense of her personality. So at first she's angry, then she's very sad, and then she says this. But why didn't he tell me any of this? Because Lakshman has told her how people are speaking. There are rumors against her. And that's why she's been banished.
And the connection with the young girl who she meets, who she helps.
The Dhobi's wife.
The Dhobi's wife. I mean, that passage is also so wonderfully written because all along it's just about the Dhobi and a rumor. But by providing a context and a dialogue, and an exchange between these two women, it just clarified so many things, and the ambiguities, and the deep pain of it all, and the tragedy of it all, just because of someone saying something carelessly. You can actually destroy a woman's life. It happened then, it's happening now. So
yes.
That passage for me was particularly poignant.
Thank
So
you.
we're going to wait to hear you on.
But why didn't he tell me any of this? I said. Why didn't he explain what was going on? I would have understood. I would have been angry, yes, but I would have sympathized with him. Don't I know how important his reputation as king is to him? Together, we might have come up with a better plan. And even if we couldn't have come up with a solution, at least I would have been part of the decision, not a victim of it. Excuse me, just a moment. I choked up with tears. But he didn't trust me, Lakshman, my husband, whom I trusted from the very moment my father put my hand in his. My husband, whom I believed in through the darkest nights of my despair in Lanka. My husband, whom I forgave even after his harsh words on the battlefield gave me no choice but to throw myself into a fire. My husband, to whom the gods themselves proclaimed my innocence, that husband has now discarded me like an old sandal. You go back and tell him this, Lakshman. He sentenced me to banishment because people were whispering that I may have betrayed him. But he's the real betrayer. Who's going to sentence him? And then she walks into the forest. I turned and started pushing my way blindly through the bushes, not sure where I was going. Brambles tore at me. I didn't care. When I'd stepped into the fire in Lanka, I'd believed that nothing could hurt me any worse, body or soul. How wrong I'd been. The pain was so excruciating now that if it hadn't been for the babies, I would have thrown myself into the Yamuna and ended the burning. My babies, the most innocent, the most wronged. I could feel them inside me, trembling, clutching at each other. Don't be afraid, little ones, I whispered, pushing my way determinedly into the dark, even though I had no idea of what it held. I'm going to live for you. I'm going to guard you with my last breath. I'm going to love you enough for mother and father both. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to be princes. But more than that, I'll teach you what you need to know to be good human beings so that you'll never do to a woman what your father has done to me.
And finally, a last question, and then we'll have about 10 minutes to take questions from the audience.
Could I just say one thing?
Of course.
So this is Sita's strength. She doesn't waste her time on what she can't do. She focuses on what she can do, where she can make a better change in life, and she's going to dedicate her life to those children.
Do you believe that strong women in any society and through the ages, today, yesterday, tomorrow, always but always have to pay a very big price for being strong women? Sita certainly does.
Well, sometimes we do have to pay the price. I hope we don't always have to. I hope things are changing around us. But until they do, if we have to pay the price, then we have to pay it. So be it. Sita was willing to do it. She shows that the price that we pay, really, it's worth it. She brought up two beautiful children as a single mother. It was worth it for her.
Thank you very much, and we'll be happy to take questions. There's a question right there. We have time for, please keep your questions short, identify yourselves.
Hello. Yeah, were you influenced by the present while you were creating the character of Sita or writing from her point of view? Were you influenced what was happening right now or what has been happening for the past decade or so?
Well, what's been happening right now, I think there's a wonderful synchronicity. But I was writing this book for the last 10 years, so, some of it is from before. But I think what is true of Sita's time is also true of our time. And I'm sure that had an influence on me because I wanted Sita to be a voice that today's woman with her challenges, with the Me Too movement and all of that, can really relate to, because both Sita and Draupadi certainly had their Me Too moments.
Hi Chitra, very nice to meet you and Shobhade. So I've recently come across this term, the unreliable narrator, which I believe as something as where the perspectives are always not going to give us a correct story. So I guess leading to my question is, with these stories like Mahabharata, Ramayana, is there any one accurate version, including that of Valmiki or Vedavyasa? My question is, I'm questioning the accuracy of that. And second part to that as well, things within your book, how much of it is your creation? For example, in Palace of Illusions, the Karna and Draupadi relationship. You just read now that Sita wanted to jump into the river. Is those small nuances from you or from sources of literature? Yeah.
Good idea. Good question. The first part about the unreliable narrator, I wouldn't say that either Valmiki or Kritibas or, Tulsidas, they're not unreliable, but they've chosen a very particular angle. And that's what they show us. So actually, when we look at the many different versions, we get a more fuller, richer idea of what these epics are and why they've lasted all of these thousands and thousands of years. And we have to remember women's retellings early on, like Chandravati, who's retelling the Bengali Ramayana. And what I hope is that looking at this tradition, I feel empowered to add my voice, my understanding, and my angle to it. What I've done, and purposely, unlike many people who are retelling stories from the epics, I've stayed very close to the major facts of the epics. But there are places where the epics just give us one hint or two hints. Karna and Draupadi. There's a hint early in the Mahabharata when Draupadi is looking at Karna's picture. She thinks this is before her Swayamvar. She's been told the Pandavas are dead. She's been told this is the only great warrior left who might win the Swayamvar. So, there's a feeling there. So I took that little bit. There are parts about the Ramayana where I feel that in this situation about which Valmiki is silent, this is how Sita would feel. That's what I've added. So, and I hope that I have made my Sita a reliable narrator.
Hi, ma'am. I wanted to ask you two quick questions. My name is Leher, and the theme of the Aranya, which is the forest, in the Indian tradition, it's the Aranya, and there is the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad too. Did you think of this leitmotif in the literature whether it is the Mahabharata, this theme of the Aranya, whether it's the Forest of Enchantment or it's exile, that kind of runs through both the Ramayana and Mahabharata? And my second question was, any plans to write about Kunti? Because I think she's like I just have such awe for her, like bringing up 5 sons and the eternal exile. So just those two questions. Thank you.
I'll answer the second one first. I think Kunti is a wonderful character, and I hope in Palace of Illusions I was able to bring out some of her nuances and her very smart thinking, which allows her to survive and her sons to survive in a very hostile court. But I have some other women in mind that I would like to write about, so maybe not Kunti right yet. The theme of the forest is very important, especially in the Forest of Enchantments, because Sita's most transformative moments, both positive and negative, occur in the forest. And she is, being a daughter of the earth, she is in tune with the natural powers of the forest. And I really wanted to bring those things out. The forest where she has happy days with Ram, the forest, the Ashokvan, where she is held captive, and finally Valmiki's forest where she brings up her children.
But also she has a special connect to birds and animals and shrubs and flowering trees.
The world of nature.
All of that almost a magical connection.
Yes, she does.
And she is as fascinated by the magic within, because perhaps it's difficult for her to even explain that to herself. But that's beautiful, all the passages in the forest. The forests come alive.
And actually in Lanka, what gives her consolation are the trees and the plants. And in fact, that was the thinking behind this cover, which is where she is holding on to a lotus leaf. And that is what is giving her consolation.
So we have time for just one more question. This young lady here.
Hi, Chitra. You've undertaken a lot of research before you wrote this book. Did you come across any reason as to why Sita did not conceive when she was there for 13 years in the forest? And going by that, was Ram justified in suspecting her?
Okay. First of all, Ram is not justified in suspecting her. And in fact, in Valmiki as well as in this, he says clearly, I do not suspect you. It is not that I suspect you. It is that I have my duty as a king to my citizens, is that if there is any shadow of doubt from any of them, then I cannot bring you back to the kingdom, or you cannot be a queen, because it would cause unrest in the kingdom. That is his thinking. And it is definitely, we can judge it one way or another, but that is what he's thinking. He does not suspect her. And the reason why they don't have a baby in the forest, I go into this, is Sita's like, maybe we should have a baby. And Ram's like, listen, we can't bring up a baby in the forest. Let's wait until we get back to Ayodhya. So they're not unlike modern couples where they discuss some family planning, and then they
But it
decide.
has been addressed very nicely as a conversation between husband and wife. I mean, him saying it's unrealistic. How are we going to manage? What are we going to feed them?
Exactly.
How are we going to raise them?
Yeah, exactly. And Sita actually says, look at all these other birds and animals having babies. And Ram says, I don't think it's the same thing.
Thank you very much, Chitra. It was magnetic. The book is fabulous. One of the best reads in the last few years, as far as I'm concerned. I'm enchanted, as I'm sure all your readers and fans will be too. So
thank you for this lovely conversation. It's great to share a stage with you. Thank you all. Thank you so much for those great questions.